Alright, guys. So today I'm going to be going over just some things that have been on my mind about feral druids. Some people have been asking me for my opinion on where ferals need to be changed, and kind of what could be altered to make us a little bit more performant in different aspects of the game. So I'm going to cover a few ideas that I have about feral druid. I'll be covering both my thoughts on PvE and PvP, and we can kind of just go from there. If you guys disagree with any of my comments, or you think that maybe I'm judging a little bit too harshly, or maybe I missed something altogether, feel free to leave a comment and let me know below. I read all my comments, so yeah, if you ever want to get something off your chest, feel free. I'll read it, and usually I'll respond as well. Or you can drop by in the stream and say hey, and yeah. So, anyways, also before the video gets started, I wanted to give a shout out to my boy Bonamic. He is one of my loyal viewers. He's been watching for a while, and yeah, and anybody that wants a shout out in one of my YouTube videos by watching the stream, you can get Pogs, which is kind of a loyalty currency, so you can drop those and get a shout out on YouTube. So, anyways, shout out to my boy Bonamic. Thank you so much for supporting the stream and hanging out. Anyways, let's get into the video, guys. So, there's a few things that I want to mention about Feral Druid in PvE right now. So in 8.1, we got a pretty big rework, okay? We got this dedicated AoE talents row, and we also got our Sabertooth moved to our first tier. So some things that come to mind, and I've spoken about this before, but I just wanted to reiterate. So passive talents are good. I just don't feel like they are. I don't feel like it's good design for the passive talents to be outperforming the on-use talents. And in Feral's case, this is the situation. The thing that has made Feral very enticing spec for me in the past is the complexity of Feral, and just the overall nature of maintaining a million things. Like, there's a meme that's like, it's like this dude, and he's like spinning all these different plates, and it's like one plate drops, boom, that's feral DPS, right? So anyways, some things that I think would be good for the class overall. If you look at the logs for ferals, the difference in the differentials in the top 99th percentile and 95th percentile all the way down to the 75th percentile has become much less. There's not as much of a difference there anymore, and I think it's has a lot to do with the fact that our passive talent build is currently our best talent build. It requires less skill. While I agree it's necessary for the passive talents to be there for more introductory players, I feel like the more veteran players of Feral, or maybe the people that are starting to get really familiar with the rotation, really want something a little more challenging. So I would like, one of the changes I would like to see is for them to simply buff Lunar Inspiration. I think buffing Lunar Inspiration to a point where it competes with Sabertooth would be huge. Sabertooth, not only does it increase your Ferocious Bite damage by 20%, which is your number one damage, it also makes it to where you do not even have to maintain your snapshotted rips anymore. You snapshot your rip on the first go, your first combo point rip. That's the last time you're going to cast it, unless you get off the target for a good amount of time, in which case you just put up another one combo point snapshotted rip and you go about your business. Lunar Inspiration, not only does it make you a little bit more versatile when you have to run away from the enemy and you have to, you put up your dot and everything like that. It also has, magic damage instead of physical damage, so it gives ferals a little bit versatility in PvP. One thing that was nice about it was, like, if somebody bopped or something, you could hit through it. Also, you could get people out of their drinks and things like that in PvP. So something about Lunar Inspiration is I think if they buffed the damage of Moonfire just a little bit, to make it compete with Sabretooth, just maybe make it, I don't know what percentage you'd have to make it because I'm not familiar with the Moonfire damage anymore, but just make it a little bit more damage. This way, if you start getting comfortable with this build and you want to go from Sabretooth to Lunar Inspiration, you want to be a little bit daring, right? Your ferocious bites aren't going to hit as hard. Most of your damage is then going to be focused in your dots, and you're going to have to start snapshotting your rips again. So this makes you have to maintain Moonfire. It also makes you have to maintain your snapshotted rips again. Another change that I think would be healthy for the feral class in general, so that people have another stage up to go, right, is to make Savage Roar a little bit more valuable. Perhaps increase the damage by 20 or bump it from 10% to 20%, right? And then get rid of the energy regen portion of it. Or, maybe if you want to go like a half and half route, like make it like a 15% damage increase. I don't know if that would be competing with the damage of Soul of the Forest, but I know if you made a 15% damage increase as well as a 15% energy regen rate increase, I think then it would be competing with Soul of the Forest. Soul of the Forest would still win out in situations such as Mythic Keystones, because Savage Roar is very annoying to keep up in a Mythic Keystone situation, especially when you use all your combo points on Primal Wrath. But Soul of the Forest in that case would still win out. Perhaps make Savage Roar a little bit stronger so that it competes with Soul of the Forest. It's almost the same thing up here. This is a little bit harder, right? Lunar Inspiration is going to be a harder trade-off from Sabretooth than it is going to be from going from Soul of the Forest to Savage Roar. Savage Roar is just an additional thing you need to maintain, right? So instead of having to maintain two things with your Snapshot Rips and your Moonfires, in this case, you just be transitioning from relying on Soul of the Forest and your finishers to simply, maintaining Savage Roar throughout the fight. I think those would be healthy changes in the PvE scene. And like I said, Soul of the Forest I think would still beat out Savage Roar in a PvE, in a Keystone scenario. So, anyways, let's go into what I think would be a little bit. Oh, also another thing that I think would be healthy for Feral Druids in PvE. So currently we don't have any utility or buffs that we bring to the raid. Why not bring back the 3% leader of the pack, just a passive, right? So that we can bring a little bit to the raid. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's asking for much. I'm not asking for Mark of the Wild or anything to compete with like Paladins Kings or anything like that. But I think that a leader of the pack passive, the 3% crit, wouldn't hurt anything to bring into PvE. And would make ferals a lot more, noticed in PvE. So, anyways, let's go into PvP and what I think is wrong with ferals right now in PvP. In PvP, we have almost no damage. Our bleed damage does joking amounts of damage. It's really pitiful. Like a rip and a rake will tick for like 3k and 2k respectively. It's actually a joke. I've seen the shaman. The shaman Ghost Wolf passive is ridiculous on its own, but I have seen that out heal, two melee classes, let alone out heal dots from like any class, but at least Shadow Priest dots or Boomkin dots or even Affliction Warlocks, and Affliction Warlocks are not very good right now. Even Affliction Warlocks dots will, drop somebody's health percentage. Feral dots, like passive regen, is stronger than them. The dots almost do nothing except when you get into dampening, which is forever in 3s, and 2s were a little bit more competitive because if you run the Blood Talons and you just keep dots on 2 targets, it's much easier. The healer can't keep up because they start at 25% dampening. But realistically, the bleed damage is way too low, so the bleed damage needs to be buffed. Another thing that I think needs to happen, if Blizzard is not willing to buff our bleeds, then we need to go back to our big bite. Now, the big bite is really the glue in which held us with. It really kept us afloat last season because our bleeds were still garbage, but our bites could surprise somebody and hit them from 50% health. I don't know. I would say that's one of the necessary changes. They don't need to make us OP or anything, but a 5%, maybe 10% bleed buff in PvP would give us a little bit more of an edge, a little bit more free time. Another thing buffing our bleeds gives us in PvP is it gives us the ability to leverage our bear form a little bit more. Right now, all of our damage is jokingly focused in our ferocious bites. And our bleeds don't do anything. So if we are sitting in bear form the whole time, we aren't doing anything. Whereas if we, had a little bit more bleed damage, then we could bleed, sit in bear form when we're getting trained, which most games we're getting trained so that we can't cast a single cyclone. Which leads me into my next point. Perhaps maybe a quality of life change for Feral Druid would be to allow Cyclone to be an instant cast again. But before you turn off the channel, hear me out on this. I don't think that Cyclone should be a, instant cast for every Predator Swiftness. I think that Predatory Swiftness, if you are choosing to use your Cyclone with your Predatory Swiftness, put Cyclone on 20, maybe 30-second cooldown, right? So you get the option to use your Cyclone as an instant cast, but if you do, then your Cyclone incurs a 20-second or 30-second cooldown. So it's a powerful CC and it's instant, but there's a trade-off, right? So I think that would be a good change for Cyclone for Druids. Another thing is we don't really have any identity in this tree here, in our Soul of the Forest or Incarn. Soul of the Forest is what I think most Ferals are leaning towards right now, but the Incarn is, it's been gutted a lot. The damage of our shreds, while in Incarn, has been reduced a lot in PvP. And that's primarily because of the changes that are specific to the damage that Shred deals while we're in stealth in PvP. It does almost no damage. So I would recommend, if anything, at least buff, either Soul. You can't really buff Soul of the Forest without affecting PvE, right? So I would say the only thing you can really do in this situation is buff or Incarn. If you are hesitant to buff bleeds or you're hesitant to buff Ferocious Bite, perhaps buff our Incarn in PvP, get rid of those, damage modifiers that you guys have added in PvP, and help us out there. Or another thing that would help a lot in PvP is if we lowered the Feral Frenzy cooldown to maybe a 20-second cooldown. I think this would also be beneficial in PvE because, let's be honest, this trade-off here is a joke, okay? In PvE, nobody's going to take Moment of Clarity on a single target or a 2-target fight, right? Nobody's going to take Feral Frenzy ever in PvE. Because how can you compete with a 45, how can you compete with a 25% increased damage to your Ferocious Bites or to your Rips or your Brutal Slashes every, 5 combo points rather than every 45 seconds giving you a 30k bleed? This trade-off here is a joke. This row needs to be changed. I was surprised when it wasn't changed, if I'm going to be honest. So those are the things that I think Feral needs adjustment right now. I know a lot of you guys are going to hate on that instant Cyclone suggestion, but I really think the 20 or 30 second, cooldown in creation would really keep that in check. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down below. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Tune in next Monday for the next podcast that I will be doing with Soul. We haven't decided on the topic yet, but anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. See ya.